happens so fast, and I saw some news sources saying that Will Smith had struck Chris Rock's arm. Others say he punched him, others say he slapped him. So even seeing the footage, there are discrepancies among reports. So wasn't a bit. And that's the prevailing feeling for me that's so tricky about all of this. I still feel, again, like I'm missing something. Like, whatever you think about Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, and we'll circle back to that in a moment because I know people have lots of opinions about them. Whatever your opinions, I didn't expect something like that from Will Smith. They do seem like really loving people, and I know they've talked about, like, he's talked about, first of all, I thought he didn't curse. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I thought that he doesn't believe in cursing. Or, I mean, it's not like he's, or like maybe I should say again, maybe he aspires to not curse. And maybe he was just mad enough, but like, yeah, I have this idea of Will Smith in my head. I don't know, I always associate him with a really affectionate, goofy energy, like lots of love, and like many of you know that I met Willow Smith a few years ago, and from what little I saw of her, the overwhelming impression that I got was that she'd been raised really well, you know, raised to be really kind and respectful. It was just a glimpse, but it made a strong, positive impression. So, not having all the information, here are some of my thoughts on what could have been at play. Of course, I don't know what went on between those three people, like over the years leading up to last night. I don't know any of that, except for what's public knowledge. So yeah, like, just going off stereotypes, like, there are people I can think of that I'd be like, ooh, that person, if I were to guess who would haul off and punch someone at the Oscars, you know, there's a short list of people I'd think were at higher risk of that kind of outburst. I would never have put Will Smith on that list. You know, I would have put myself on that list shock. Like, oh my god, like I can't believe it. Like I said, I've gotten physical with people. It's never okay. But the problem doesn't get fixed by like alienating people in order to feel superior about it, being like, oh, I can't believe he did that. Like he cast a shadow on the entire industry. Harm is happening every day on all levels, in all circles. And that's not to say it's okay, it's to say we need to get comfortable talking about it. We need to. So yeah, I think I just find the way people are talking about it like very telling. Like the gleeful takedowns and the mocking, like that's the thing. Okay, now I'm remembering where I was going with this. So trying to figure out why he took it that far. Because, yeah, he saw that his wife's feelings were hurt, and it was a shitty joke. But yeah, in theory, like, everyone's getting made fun of, and you kind of know that you're in for it. Like, that's something that the Oscars do to kind of appease the masses, because, again, there's very much this attitude. People are like, I don't give a fuck about the Oscars now more than ever, like, and I get it. Like, I mean, I still like the Oscars, but like, shit feels hard lately, you know, like harder and harder. And so it does sort of feel like a sacrificial altar, like in order to appease people who may watch and be like, oh, fuck the Oscars, like fuck all these people. Like for me, movies are really important to me. Like I really love them and I really believe in them, and I believe that they have value, tremendous value. And it's not so much that I don't think that people should get rich off making movies if they're able to. Just like I don't have a problem with doctors getting rich off being doctors, entrepreneurs getting rich off, you know, their businesses. I just have a problem with that happening while so many people can barely survive, right? And so like when people are more angry along those lines than ever, it does feel like there's this pressure on the hosts to just lambaste, just like roast the shit out of that room of people as like a price of admission, you know, like I don't know, like that's the quid pro quo of it, the trade-off. And Will Smith alludes to that. So here's the key though, like he's talking about how you're just supposed to be able to take the jokes, let people say whatever they're gonna say, and you're kind of like, yeah, that's the expectation. I see so many people being like, yeah, like it's just jokes, it's just comedy. And I think if we were just talking about it in a vacuum, like in terms of that night, and we think that he's talking about everyone there, and he's like, we are all supposed to just take it and take it and take it, maybe it's fair to say, okay, that's a little sensitive, even though I really didn't like that specific joke. But the idea that like it's asking too much that everyone just like smile and laugh off a joke here and there, no matter how rough, just again, like not over that line that I think Chris Rock did cross, but some pretty rough stuff, you know, like maybe if you'd just been talking about, oh, they expect us all here in this room to just take this abuse, it's like, okay, maybe that is a little sensitive, maybe I understand that perspective. I don't know if he was just speaking about that room, because to me it came off more as a reference, whether a lot of flack, like a lot. And I'm trying to think of like why this is. Like, first of all, maybe it's the Scientology thing, which I kind of get because, I mean, how ridiculous, and ridiculous is too nice a word for it, because the Church of Scientology has hurt a lot of people. I don't think that's any different. Like, I think organized religion, I think there are many examples in organized religion of that kind of religiosity being used to hurt and control people. And I think people just love to talk about Scientology because it's one of the stranger iterations of that very familiar, that very old story. Like, my partner grew up in the Baptist church, the Southern. My partner grew up in the Baptist church, the Southern Baptist church. And wow, like, there are some things that are just like so hard for me to wrap my brain around in terms of some of the stuff he's had to deal with. Growing up within evangelical Christianity. Anyway. Just some stuff that to me is just really not okay. So yeah, to me that's par for the course. And I think people just, again, think Scientology is so bizarre, so they really fixate on it. But I don't think they're Scientologists for like the last 7 years or more. And I think there's been like denunciation there. Like, I think Jada has said like she wouldn't ever want to educate children within the Scientologist, within the Church of Scientology. Raise children. I think it was educate. I don't want to say raise, because that feels stronger. But like, she was opening up a school and she was like, just to be clear, like, this is not affiliated with Scientology. And she went further and she was like, I wouldn't want to educate children within the Church of Scientology. So now it's possible that people just consider it such a, like a mar, like such a strike on your record forever to have ever been affiliated. And also like in positions of power, the way some celebrities are within the Church of Scientology. Like, it's okay to not be okay with that. Like, if that's your beef with them, I understand. Like, emotionally in front of the world, trying to talk about subjects that impact a lot of people. And sometimes, you know, they miss the mark. Sometimes they miss the mark inevitably, and it can be like kind of weird and alienating, but I respect the courage it takes. I don't think it's just like a desire for attention. There seems to be like a set of guiding principles behind all of it, you know? I don't know, and then people just like shit on them. Tomato. And then I have one other theory, like relatedly, in terms of why this is. Bear with me. This might really like bother you or freak you out, or even just like shock you that I'm putting it in these terms. I think we as a society project onto Will Smith a lot of cuckold angst. Like, we've made him into a kind of clown within our patriarchy. I'm not gonna go too much into like the toxic masculinity that underpins this idea that like Jada is so unsatisfied because they've dared as a couple to talk about things that actors involved. Okay, Beyonce's opening. I am obsessed. I wish I had a more original take. I thought it was amazing. Like, clearly they let her have creative control. The art direction was just like so her, and I loved everything. Every single thing. The choreography, the styling. Oh my god, the lime green and that diamond garter on her thigh, and the sunglasses, all of it being on that tennis court. I thought it was all incredible. I loved her hair, I loved her makeup, I loved every single thing. Every single thing. that's what I was gonna say. The night made me wish that I'd already seen CODA going into the night because it swept. It won Best Picture. And I wanted to see it. I was like not aware of it as a film until really late, which is so silly. One of my really good friends is a CODA, if you're not aware. It stands as an acronym. It stands for Child of Deaf Adults. So he is the hearing child of two share